So what we're asking you to do is to think about the future, to think about what things could be like in Singapore 50 years from now. And looking at a few different aspects of life in Singapore. First of all, socioeconomic. How do people interact? How do they exchange goods and services? Environmental issues. What's our relationship with the natural world? Things like energy, transportation, waste concerns. And engagement. How are citizens and the state interacting with each other? How are decisions getting made and people getting heard? We're going to ask you to envision those components. So that's sort of the, let me back up here, that's sort of the dreams and memes portion. And then we move on to realization, where you actually start to think about and talk about how to get there. So putting those ideas of socioeconomic, environmental, and engagement issues into some plans, some ways to do things. You're going to be doing a portion of this in conversation. And there are some specific guidelines that we want you to keep in mind. Now, I've facilitated organizational development meetings, I've facilitated faculty trainings. It's very important to keep these guidelines in mind, to keep on track. So remember that all ideas are good. During the brainstorming portion of this activity, generate as many ideas as you can. Get them down. And we're asking for big visions here. We're talking about 50 years in the future. And when you're in the visioning part, don't worry too much about the how to get there. You'll work that out in collaboration and with the help of your teammates. So just focus on what the vision is, what you want it to look like as you do the initial brainstorming and visioning. Then once you get into conversation, participation is key. And that means not just having something to say, but really listening when someone else is talking. That deep listening is very, very important to having a productive conversation. When you do speak, speak briefly and speak as honestly and earnestly as you can. Now, we have to constrain the time in order to keep this entire day on track. So you won't get as much time to talk as you're going to end up wanting. And I'm sorry about that. We'll give you as much time as we can. Continue the conversation afterward. So I want to talk through very briefly what the entire plan is, and then we'll step you through it again as we go forward. So the first part is going to be actually getting into teams. Teams should be ideally 5 people, no fewer than 4, no more than 6. And you can just do that spontaneously and then sort of find a space for your team. Claim some chairs and pull them around in a circle. Do brief introductions so everyone at least knows each other's names and maybe a tiny, tiny bit of background, very brief, not much time. And then you have 3 important roles to fill within your team. One person will be the scribe, and they are going to write the results from the conversation at the end. One person will be the timekeeper, and they are going to help keep people on track, especially as we get to the later conversation, where for one round, people are going to speak for no more than 1 minute. And then one presenter. And presenting is going to be presenting that idea that gets written down to the entire group, coming up to one of the mics and talking about it. Not every group will get to present, but you should have someone ready in case your idea is one of the best ideas and you do get to present. Okay. So you're going to do team construction. We're going to limit you to 10 minutes to get it together and select those roles. So make sure you do that. Then we'll ask you to sit and quiet down a little bit. And each of you are going to be doing individual brainstorming on those 3 ideas, socioeconomic, environmental, and engagement issues. And you're going to be writing those down. And I think there's, yes, all of the packs now have have these larger Post-its, so you can write on those. Don't feel constrained to write in the lines. In fact, turn them sideways. You'll probably do better. Because you want to write big and you want to write short phrases.
If you want to draw, that's fine too. In fact,
yeah.
If you want to draw, that's probably better.
Yes. So these are your visions. If you want to illustrate your visions, that's perfect. What you don't want to do is write more than about 15 words. It should fit on a Post-it, and it should be easily understandable and quickly read by your teammates. Once you've generated ideas, ideally in all 3 of those categories, if you've got multiple in the same category, that's okay too, but try to think about something for all 3. Then you're going to go through a process where all of the ideas are going to get rated by everyone on the team. So you're going to put those Post-its onto, here, let's show them one of these. Well, not that one.
Well, not that one. All right.
Here we go. Yeah. So you're going to have these big sheets for those 3 categories. Put the Post-it onto the sheet that it best matches in terms of which category you're describing. And then everyone is going to look at those Post-its and stick little stickers on them. You don't have to rate every Post-it that's on there. You're going to be limited to, we'd like you to choose 6 ideas out of all of the ideas across all 3 sheets that you really like, so maximum of 6 that you really like, and put one of these bluish stickers on that, one of the little bits. And then up to, you don't have to do any red, but up to 3 red for ideas that you really don't like for some reason, put a red sticker on it. That's going to help your team quickly look at and evaluate these different ideas and start to select out which ones are the best. At this point, you can ask your teammates for some clarification. You can say, who wrote this and what does this mean? But don't get into a discussion about it. Just get clarification on what the idea is so that you can assign it a rating. And again, this has to go quickly. And then you get to start talking about it. So once everything is rated, everybody has a chance to look at those ratings. Then there's going to be one round of conversation that's really individual monologues. Everyone in the team gets 1 minute to speak their mind. What you choose to do with that 1 minute is up to you. Everyone else just listens. And this is where the timekeeper comes in. So you have to make sure that no one really goes over a minute. It can be shorter if you want, but no longer than a minute. After everyone has had a chance to speak their mind for 1 minute, then it's open for more general discussion, questions and responses to one another. And what you're working on is, what are the best ideas we've had? You may think of them independently, you may synthesize them, whatever makes sense for your team, to then take that, distill it into something that you can develop an action around, that you can develop some way to realize within the next 50 years. The scribes will then write down that distilled idea, so we'll let you know when we're getting close to the end of time, so you can go ahead and write down what you've got. And then some of the teams will be invited to actually come up and tell everyone about it. So I'm totally dominated the mic, and I apologize for that. Chulin, did you have any other?
So this is really just meant to be exploratory and generative. So just to very quickly add on so that we can sort of get on with it. One, go and join a group with people that you don't know. Okay, the best conversations happen at the water cooler. We don't have one here today, so go make one for yourself. 2, don't be intimidated by your group mates. Okay, everybody, we're not asking for expertise, we're asking for dreams, and everybody is capable of dreaming, so don't shy lah, okay? That's why we are starting the conversations with the Post-its. That's not up for discussion at the beginning, so don't worry, you know, don't kind of go, wow, that person got PhD, I don't have. Well, Okay, so just come, join a group, and have some fun. All right, are we ready to go?
I think we are.
All right, so we're gonna need to have you on your feet while we sort out this technology thing. If we can get you on your feet, and if you can start to find clusters of people. So remember, group size, minimum of 4, no more than 6. Go find some people to join a group with, and then move the chairs around, okay? Once you're seated, then our volunteers will come to you and give you some envelopes.
Singapore. So I'm adapted. One, where did the presentation happen? But we are behind ST sheet.
Probably you can start 1 minute and 30 seconds. Grows by itself.
Caso de facto cujo eliminate
The thing I think we all 6 of us in the group more or less agreed upon is that in order to move to a brighter future, a more positive future, dealing with some of the challenges that will automatically come with climate change and things like rise of automation, is the idea of sharing of resources. We all seem to agree that in various different forms from various different individuals, but we all seem to agree on the fact that sharing of resources is paramount to having a sustainable development model, right? Sharing of resources in terms of information, in terms of food sources, in terms of general needs that every individual will be looking out for. One thing we didn't agree so much on, I think, is the way that's going to be achieved, right? And the level and the extent to which the government would play an active part in this. We seem to be very split on that. Some of us thought a top-down approach is the way this is going to happen, whereas others thought the opposite, that policymaking will transform a bit towards a bottom-up approach, and individual citizens will become more involved in decision-making processes. So I guess those were the 2 opposite ideas that came out of our discussion, sharing of resources on one hand, but the way that was going to happen is something that we differed quite widely on. The vision anyway had to do with the fact that we need to be more involved and more aware of each other's needs and more I suppose, geared towards a more level playing field for everyone included in society.
I think similarly to the previous group, we had a better idea of what we wanted to see rather than necessarily how we were going to get there. So let me try and describe some of that. We really focused on sort of communal spaces, non-aircon, cool spaces, green spaces, space for wild things to grow and to let nature be. And to use that analogy also for human interaction, which is free, permissive, respectful, to situate these in HDBs, which have sort of these indeterminate community spaces where people can interact. And we mentioned that this could be a local bar where people engage, or it would be the Kopitiam. And where the interaction is less commercialized and decentered both in its consumption and productive practices. So when we talked about how we might get there, we came up with identifying and mobilizing existing resources and communities. And our question, much like the previous group, was who's the actor? And we would much rather see a community-initiated effort or people-initiated effort from the ground up. But that requires a supportive state infrastructure, and particularly as spaces that are left for the growth and emergence of these outcomes of interest.
Okay, so our group's general focus was on, sorry? I'll show the picture. Actually, I'm not sure what the picture is of. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure why we have something like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle on our picture, but the consensus that our group had was that, okay, we need to see more altruism and a more inclusive and accepting approach to seeing other people in this dense city-state. And we were still kind of in the middle of discussing exactly how we were going to see that, but a few of us shared a lot of the daily things that we see around us and that we'd like to see a different scene. And I think, to summarize it best, it would be a way of getting people to be more aware of the situations they're in, when they're in MRTs, when they're in lifts, when they're in groups of large people, to actually notice that their small micro interactions with each other actually have repercussions. We want to be able to see people beyond the categories that we've been trained to see them as through society. And perhaps one way of overcoming this, I think, is quashing certain casual stereotypes that happen at a young age, especially in schools and education. Yeah, trying to also, I think, undo the sort of state-imposed definitions of what races are, and trying to filter social policy through those race-based categories. I think we'd like to see a move away from that and more towards individual stories, I think, collections of stories rather than impersonal data.
Okay, I lobbying, okay, but I've been appointed to say something. You know, one of the things that worried us is that we might be making decisions now for population that doesn't exist. So, are we happy with the decisions made 50 years ago about the state of our environment now? I don't think so, at least we're not. So this is a big concern. Maybe if we let things just go, they will naturally collapse and we can rebuild. So the more we intervene, this is a really radical idea, but the more we intervene now, we make decisions for people who aren't there yet. So that's a real concern. So we're thinking how to get to a self-contained, synergistic, self-supporting unit that takes care of its own natural space. Not by further integration, that's for sure, and certainly not by globalization. So that's it. That's my 2 minutes, right?